Welcome back to Orchid House. This is Olivier in Fort Lauderdale, and I recently had a few requests regarding how to properly water your plants. So I figured I'd give you just a demonstration today. This is not about how often you need to water them. It depends from genus to genus, from species to species. I refer to other videos. Obviously, you know your cattleyas, they need to dry out in between watering. The vandas too, actually, but you water them every day. So I mean, every plant is different. You just remember most orchids are epiphytes, which means that their roots are exposed in the wild, they are attached to the tree, they dry out quickly. If they are in a pot, they don't, and so that's where you have to be very careful. So first case in point, the vanda. The vanda, you need to really stay on it. You want all these roots to turn green, because until they turn green they haven't absorbed enough water. So right now this one is completely dry, and so let me go for, I use the cone. Now, technically when you water you should avoid watering the leaves because it creates diseases. For vandas like this it's a little difficult to do and I am lucky because in my growing area I have a lot of ventilation. I have, on top of the natural ventilation, I have a few fans around, and so that helps quite a bit. But if you are in a very stale environment, you should be very careful. Now, so let's do it. So you see these roots have turned green right away. The newer roots typically take longer. They stay white much longer. So it starts to get green. This one is still this is a newer root, you see, so it stays white longer than the rest. So I'll stay on it. I mean, usually you may have to be on there for like a minute for the plant to be thoroughly hydrated. And sometimes the really new roots stay somewhat white, and that's how it is. So the bottom line with your vandas, it's not just a 5 seconds job. I mean, you really need to stay on them. And sometimes one thing you can do, you water them for like 30 seconds and then you come back like 5 minutes later and you do it again until these are properly green. So this is a beautiful vanda, forgot the name now, Stephen Scott Young. It blooms year round basically. Right, so now when you have mounted plants, this is my Paraphalenopsis labucensis. I recently made a video on this plant. So all these roots, same thing, they really need to be thoroughly wetted. Now I use not just my hose, but I also have a rain barrel with 80 gallons. And so then I use sprayers by hand. It's a lot more work, but the rainwater is what they prefer. So basically, same thing, you stay on it. You want all these roots to appear very wet, and the newer ones like this one, they will take longer to change color. So here at the back, so you see these are 2 new roots, sorry, 1, 2 I knew this would be messy, and they will stay white much longer, but you really stay on them. At the bottom too you have newer roots, so they stay white much longer. But yeah, so again, it's not just a 5 minutes spritz. You really want to make sure that these roots are thoroughly wetted, because that's what happens when there's a storm, there's a shower, and they get drenched for minutes or hours, and that's when they have time to absorb all the water. Okay, so I'm not going to stay too long here, but you got the idea. All right, Cattleya. Let me see, where did I put my Cattleya? Okay, all right. So this is a nice one. It has 1, 2, 3 new growths that hopefully are going to bloom soon. And so these ones, same thing. You're going to water. but you stay on it, and it needs to start, I mean, you need to start seeing the water pouring out of the bottom. You want to do that at least once a month very thoroughly, because what happens with the fertilizers, there's an accumulation of salt in the roots, and that's toxic for them. So we call that leaching. You leach the roots, and so all these salts are drained away from the pot, and that's very important for the roots. So let's go here. I'm going to go on the shower setting. And so you see at the bottom of the, now you see it's leaking hard, but so again, once a month you probably going to stay on there like 30 seconds. This is good enough for now, but so those cattleyas, obviously they have to dry out every time, but when you water them, you really water them good. That's a principle for any orchid. Okay, Caraserum lodiga, here is a beautiful spike coming, so it's fairly dry, which it shouldn't be this time of, oops, sorry, again. So you're gonna water it real good, and I use these transparent pots because this way I can also see how wet or dry the root ball is. And you see now it's really wet, and that's what I wanted. Now the Carasedums, that's maybe a counter example where you can wet the foliage if you want to try and get rid of the mites, which are an enormous problem with them. But you do that if the plant is in the shade, because otherwise it risks burning the leaves with the sun. So what I'm going to show you now, and I've made a video on this in the past, so with the mist function. This doesn't kill the mites, it just knocks them off the plant. And so that's something that you can do. But again, well, if you have no ventilation, that's probably not a good idea. And if it's in full sun, that's also not a good idea. All right, Stanopia, these guys, they like to stay wet, but I always like to have them approach dryness. And again, once you water, you want to see until at the bottom of the pot. Right now, this is maybe not the best way to visualize it. Let me use the hand spray, which I use a lot on my Stanopias anyway. So right now nothing's happening, but you see the bottom of the pot, now it starts leaking continuously, and that's when you know that the medium have reached some level of saturation of wetness, and you're good until there is leaking like that. It means that's not enough. So right, so again, same principle, thorough watering. What else did I have here? Yeah, well, mounted plants, same thing. So Phalaenopsis cornucervi, it has 3 spikes, 1, 2 and 3. And so these, I want these roots to turn green. Now this one should turn green faster. But all these mounted plants, they need to be, in the summer here in South Florida, they need to be watered every day. I mean, they dry out fast, it's very hot, they grow a lot, and so again, it's not just a 5 seconds job. You want to make sure that this root ball is very wet. And again, you see the newer roots, they tend to stay white, but you want to make sure it's thoroughly wetted. And again, if possible, avoid wetting the leaves. Like I said, I don't worry too much here because I'm lucky with ventilation, but that's something you may want to pay attention to if you have an issue with ventilation. And I think that's what I wanted to show you. I have this one. I recently made a video on overnight soaking. So this is an Encyclia, which I don't water a lot because they don't like excessive watering, but as you can tell, it stopped flowering like 2 weeks ago, and the bulbs are very wrinkled and shriveled. And so there's also a new growth coming here. And there's also new roots growing, and so I'm gonna soak it for like half a day, and normally the next day they should plump up quite a bit, and it needs that occasionally. Again, in nature they have these strong showers that you cannot replicate, so this is one way to try and do that. So basically the idea, you want your plants to be soaked real good, and then you try to avoid wetting the leaves, and yeah, I think that's the basic idea. Before I let you go, I want to show you Peristeria elata. It has never bloomed for me, but this year that's it. So you have, this is a flower stalk which apparently can get up to 2 meters or 6 feet high, and then this is the new bulb next to it. Now this flower is growing much faster than the bulb, but these bulbs become enormous down the road. I already have made an indentation here because I want to try and avoid repotting. They don't like that. And then there's another one here, again the flower stalk, and then the new bulb that's a little further behind. And this is the national flower of, it's beautiful, looks like a little dove, it's white, and it's absolutely gorgeous, so I can't wait to see this blooming. And then if my cameraman wants to come here but not stumble on everything, I want to show you just Caracidum Maria Mercado, which is very nice. It's a beautiful stalk. I'm partial to green flowers, and this one is a very vigorous grower. It already has a second spike there, although there's been some damage to the buds for whatever reason. And so that's it for today. So thank you very much for tuning in. I'll see you next time now. Bye bye.